Welcome back to the channel. Have you ever wanted to expand your favorite 8-step sequencer to 64 steps? Or how about turning a CV source like offset or an LFO into a melodic pitch sequencer? What about easily repeating complex sequences made with multiple different sequencers or random? Or adding CV processing like slew, noise, or ratcheting at the push of a button? Just punch in whenever you want. Are you ever looking for new ways to sequence other than the concepts that you already have on hand? And then would you want to be able to save all those and recall them at the push of a button, like some sort of playable modular mixtape of gate and CV? If you're like me, you said yes to at least one of these, or maybe multiple. So let's talk about this. This is Shakmat Bishop's Miscellany MK2. You might be asking, what's with that name? I think it's based on a chess move or strategy, which makes some sense considering Shakmat. Building a patch can be really strategic, especially if you want it to be something that you can perform. And I think that's Shakmat's strong suit in a bunch of their modules. And that word, miscellany, it means mixture. Alright, kind of brilliant, right? At least you might think so after you learn what it does. At its core, it's a dual-stepped CV gate recorder, generator, regenerator, and processor too. It basically takes in CV voltage and gates and quantizes that to scales and timing to make sequences. It's basically a PVR of CV and gate. You can generate new sequences right on the module using a number of algorithms, or you can just manipulate what you have recorded as well. And all that can be saved on this SD card, revised, and then recalled using playlists. And these can play back in a clip launcher style or something more like a tracker. I like both of them. It even has undo if you record something and it didn't quite work out. Boop! These two buttons right here. It's basically a brain or a main hub for your patches, and it's flexible and fast. And I'd also say, with some considered patching, you can take one patch and turn it into a whole set. Okay, I know you've seen it. It's got a tiny screen right here. So far, I've steered clear of screens, but I was definitely curious when this was announced at Superbooth. I was wondering if Shakmat could strike a good balance of keeping this as performable as some of the other modules that I love, while offering whatever this screen was meant to offer. I also like that it was portrait format. You'll have to stick around for my thoughts on this one. We're gonna get right into the case for a demo, jams, and so many details and ideas. But just before we do, I wanted to thank Shakmat for sponsoring this video. Long story short, they reached out noting the effort gone into some of the past videos that I made on their modules, and they just wanted to compensate a little bit for the time that I spent on this one. I'm really excited about this because this video up here was actually the first video that I talked about modules at all. And it was about Bard Quartet, also by Shakmat. And just so you know, I'm just doing my thing as always over here, looking for those gems in whatever modules I have my hands on. And Shakmat will get to see this video when you do. Okay, let's not waste any more time. Let's get this in the case. Alright, we've got bishops in the case, inputs and outputs up top, this screen in the middle here, and an SD card just above for all the stuff, including firmware updates. Big win. That is flanked by 3 knobs and 1 push button encoder. And then all sorts of buttons and a cool layout on the bottom. So put simply, Bishops allows you to record external CV and gate, record internal CV and gate through gen and regen algorithms, and then also record non-destructive CV processes. And a lot of cool interactions between all of those. Then you can save your sequences in the memory page and then organize the sequences into a playlist and recall them whenever you want. All this is saved under a project to keep things organized. We'll go through it in a sec. Let's get a patch going first. Alright, so we've got a pretty simple patch going with an oscillator, a filter, and effect. That's Banshee Reach, Centaur's Gates, and Bib. Noise Tools is supplying clock and also random stepped voltage going through attenuation and offset on A01 right here before going into Bishops. Then Bishops is sending CV to our oscillator, the volt per octave right here. Turning up the filter, we just hear a drone because we don't have anything playing back. We can press the channel and external record. Bishops will listen to the CV and pass that through to the oscillator. Notice this is not in a musical scale at all. Let's fix that. All we have to do is navigate down with the encoder, click it, and select a scale. Now that's quantized. If we want to record, we just hold down the external record button, And when I let go, it just plays and loops what we recorded. Notice how the step length says it's 16? That's because it's quantized to a time signature. It said QL before, for quantized length. You can record over any part of that by punching in and pressing record again. The step length will stay the same as what's recorded. You can get quite flexible with just adjusting the attenuation and offset and punching in and just holding record until I got something I like. That's cool. And I can always adjust the step length. Bishops also has this cute little progress bar, which is so nice to have. So that's CV. How about gates? We need to send gates in and then out of bishops. Let's clock step E and send channel A to the gate input on bishops. We'll make a random pattern here on step E. Patch the gate out of bishops to an envelope here on triple steeple and patch that into the filter cutoff. If we record again, we have our CV and gate sequence. And of course, we can adjust the envelope, cutoff, and CV to taste. The fun thing is, if you want to have CV changes on different steps than gates, you can do that. Or if you want those to happen at the same time, just sequence them that way. In this case, we can put a mult on the gate that's coming out of step E and trigger the sample and hold. Of course, record again. Cool. Let's take a quick look at this little screen before we continue. This is the main screen as it says on top, and all these settings we can change. It's really nice to have all of these in one place. We've got length, like I mentioned, with a max of 64. Div, so you can add in clock dividers to your sequences. Then root note, octave, and scale, like we mentioned before. The next two things down here are regen and process, which I'll show you just after we get another voice in here. Actually, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna change around the color of these patches just so these are pink like that, so it's all one voice. Cool. Let's send CV and gate to pizza, which is in envelope VCA mode, so sending a trigger to the sync will trigger that. Patch the octave output to 3x MIA so we can control the volume, and patch that into the case summer so we can hear it. To record the second channel, we just press channel 2 down below. Notice the screen changes to reflect the settings over there. Let's set the quantizer to the same scale. Now let's generate sequences right on bishops. We can generate that looking at any screen, but we can go to the gen and regen screen so we can get acquainted. You can navigate the screen in a couple different ways. You can hold down nav and use the encoder, or even better, press nav and then the button associated with what you're looking for, and that's so much quicker, which works for most things you need to get at quick. In this case, regen. And nav to go back home. Okay, back to regen. We can cycle through a list of algorithms, and as we do that, the title at the top changes from gen to regen. Gen is generating new stuff, and regen is regenerating stuff based on what's in the buffer or what's coming in the input if you're in listening mode. That means real-time CV effects, which is pretty cool. For each of them, it shows a parameter for X and Y, these knobs here. Notice the little line indicating that they're related to this button here? I really like that. As we turn the knobs, the values are reflected. If you end up liking a particular algorithm, you'll be able to know where the knobs are and what the influence will be, or how it'll influence the result. I feel like this is the way the algorithmic modules with screens should work. The whole UI assignment doesn't change per algorithm, it's just these two knobs, and here's what you can do with them. Just press the big regen button and what you see here will take effect. record it, just hold down the internal record button at the same time. We can adjust the chance, a CV change, and a gate will happen. And there you go. Pizza has a sequence. Let's go back and sequence our other oscillator. Let's try random 2. This is more based on Euclidean instead of chance. Just press both regen and internal record. Simple as that. So we've got 2 sequences. Let's save one for channel 1. Press the nav and the play button, which is the same as the hold. And you know the drill. Save the playlist down here. Save the sequence. And all of this is managed per project. We'll get back to recall in a bit, but let's collect some more sequences. I'll save the ones I like along the way. Let's go back to the regen page and maybe I'll add some drums. Kick and hi-hat from steppy to rample. Add rample to 3XMIA. Mix with the pizza. Okay, let's go into the next algorithm, which is arp. This stretches a ramp or triangle over the length of the sequence, and you can choose which direction and range. Since it's over the whole length of the sequence, maybe a shorter sequence might be more what you're used to for an arp. Okay, let's go back to a longer sequence. It's cool, like extending to a longer sequence and having so many blank steps. If we want regen to hold on, we can just press regen and press hold. That'll actually work with any of these buttons, internal and external record, along with regen and process. Anyway, skip ahead if you don't want to hear all these algorithms. Though you should, they're pretty cool, and yeah, I kinda wish I hadn't recorded so many jams already. Half. This kind of makes sequences based on deviations of ramps and jumps and the probability of switching from one to the other. Knob. This is a sweet knob recorder. It has a threshold, so if you turn that down, it'll be like a typical knob recorder. But the further you turn it up, the further you need to turn the knob to trigger the next gate. I'm forgetting to record. Let's do that. Let's save this one. I've been forgetting to save. The rest of the algorithms are regen, so these will be reading in what's coming in the buffer and changing them around. Let's start with a little bit more simple pattern here. Cool, let's start with that. Range. This is like attenuation and offset. But the cool thing is that because you can record it, you can continually change the recorded sequence. Say we do a recording, it's out of range, doesn't work, just press erase and hold at the same time, and it'll just undo the last record. Save that one. Speed. This allows you to go at different speeds through the sequence, but adhering to the grid of the clock. That. Rate. This is also a cool idea. It's a sample rate reducer. It's basically reading back the sequence by making chunks of steps and making them all one value. Cool if you want to take a sequence and reduce the note changes for variations or performance. You can also shift the step forward within those chunks, the one that's determining what note and gates it's pulling from. That one. Slice. This has got to be one of my favorites. Basically grab a slice smaller than your sequence to loop. Let's grab a sequence that more is going on. We'll use knob again. Okay, now let's go back. You can control how many steps and where those steps are coming from. Playing around with the length is super fun. And you can set this to something like 7 as well. Check this out though, this is super cool. We can still record into the buffer from the external recorder at any time using these algorithms. Just press external record and hold. Never recording into the buffer, but since the sequence is longer than 7, we only hear the change when it records over the step we're looping. Internal. If we wanted to keep the 7 feel, we could just adjust the step length of the sequence to multiple of 7. There's also a handy sequence edit page for some finer grained controls like shifting by steps, reversing, and doubling up the buffer with the same steps. Let's go back to another sequence again with this knob recorder. Random slice. This goes to a random place in your sequence, and you can choose the length of the slice, and then the probability you'll jump to the next random slice. And the slice sizes are even more musical numbers. This takes a sequence and delays it by a certain number of steps. You can also shift it up or down in semitones. You can make a pretty cool call and answer, so let's do that. Let's make it hard panned left and right by patching pizza into the right side a bit. Higher octave. Let's make the main sequence have a bigger gap in it. Oh, knob again. Cool. Then we can set the input of the second channel to be the output of the first channel in the options menu. Right here. And then if we go to channel 2 and put it in listen mode, hear how they're playing the same thing now? So let's go back to delay. Watch what happens when we press this button. Hold it. This is so cool. So cool. Let's go to the next one. Let me change the patch back first. Remember, this is the last one. This will replace parts of the sequence with other parts based on probability. You can choose how big that section being replaced is. So that's gen and regen. Let's take a break and listen to an early jam with this module. I'll tell you about process CV effects and how to recall all those sequences that we saved. Back in a bit. Bishops is basically being used as the hub of all the melody and rhythms and stuff like that for the two voices, which are Shakmat Banshee Reach and Undertone Rossi. Both voices are going through Centaur's gates, envelopes all coming from triple steeple, and I have three main sequencers, Griffin's Claws, Steppy, and Barred Quartet. For the bass line, all I had to do was hold down this record and I would get a fresh bass line every time. We're using Steppy to go through all the different steps of Barred Quartet as an art. Both the CV from Barred Quartet and the gates that are coming in from Steppy are going into the second channel here of Bishop's Miscellany. When I hold down record, those sequences are being recorded here and then they're being played back. And I'm also using Steppy to vary, sort of like to set up a sequence ahead of time, and then I'm recording it over on Bishops, whether I want it more dense, less dense in a particular pattern. And I don't need to record that whole sequence in entirety. I can just record little chunks. So maybe I want certain segments of that bass pattern higher in an octave or lower in an octave. So the second sequencer here is Griffin's Claws, that's channel 1, the CV offset out for channel 1, and the gate going into channel 1 of Bishops. What's happening when I record externally when I have channel 1 selected is I can use this slider and basically draw out or play melodically what I want that sequence to be. So we have Bishops basically sucking in the three different sequencers information, and then I can manipulate that in different ways. This is a very cool workflow also. Griffin's Claws with Bishops, they're like best friends. For drum stuff, I have Dictat basically being the drums, and this is kick, snare, and hi-hat all going to Rample. That's going out, and the kick is triggering channel 3 here of triple steeple. That is going out to the Spectral AO1, and that is going to the cutoff for the bass of Centaur's Gates. We're basically taking out some of the high-end energy and allowing that kick to stick out. Okay, let's get into process. That's the other big button here. These are basically CV effects that are non-destructive. So they act like an effect layer on top of the sequence that you already have going on. And that's after regen. You can also apply that to anything you're listening through the input as well. So that means that these CV effects are real time. And whatever your automation is for them, they will stay there even if you record a new sequence underneath. The first one is slide. This is basically slew, but the values go way high. So same thing, just press the process button to hear what's on screen. But if you crank it to 100%, you can actually hold pitches right where they are. And some of these have sub options too, but I am not going there. Gate length. Let's switch this to an envelope with a sustain stage. Holding down process, we can automate the gate length. Ratchets. You can select how many ratchets, and I love that you can just record them as punch-ins whenever you want. You gotta try this on drums. Notice how I can just stack these processes on top of each other? Let's declutter what's going on right now so we can hear the next one. Let's take them all off by going to the process, press erase and process. It'll only erase the process selected. Kind of wish there was a way to erase them all at once. Vibrato? This is very fun. If you're using bishops to modulate stuff, this would be wild. And then noise. This one is cool to add a bit of grit to stuff, and I'm sure there's lots of other uses. Alright, that's all the algorithms on this module. There's lots of useful ones. I'm actually down with the way that Shakmat worked with screen. Well done. You won me over. Okay, we saved a bunch of sequences in our journey through algorithms. Let's set up a playlist. You can toggle quickly back and forth between save and playlist, which is cool. So we see this list is empty right now. We just need to populate it. Just go to a slot and press the encoder for 2 seconds. Select the sequence and click again. And then just repeat that until you get the order you want. There you go, populated. This little star will show that the playlist has been edited, so I can go and save the playlist again. But let's just get into how to recall them. Now that we have a bunch of sequences in there, we can just go to one and press the hold button, which in this menu is play. You can set the sequence to play at the next clock, or after the sequence finishes, or at the next reset. Also, if you're sequencing things that are critical where they phase and you want them to be in the same spot every time, you'll want to use reset. And pay attention to the little progress bar in the main screen. One more thing about these playlists. Both channels share the sequence pool, so maybe you'll want to save these accordingly, say even versus odd, or maybe every 4 is channel 2 or something like that. And because the channels share the pool, you can send the same sequence to one channel or the other one, or both at the same time. I feel like everywhere that you turn, Bishops has more opportunities that you can do with it. There's still more! Let me show you tracker mode. There are all kinds of settings in the options menu. If we go to playlist mode and select tracker, then go to playlist next and select end of sequence, it'll just play one sequence after the other. This is just begging me to do a sequence with a bunch of drums and edit on the fly. Probably in another video. We're not even done the panel. There's these assignable CV ends, and if you think about all the things that we just covered, being able to control all those things with assignable CVs and being able to control them either one or the other or both at the same time, opportunities with this module see endless. And there's still more things. If you go into the options menu, you can change the source, channel source select, playlist mode, launching one or both channels at the same time when the playlist actually plays, time signatures for quantized length, link mode. I'm gonna just interrupt myself for just a sec and show you how assignable CVs are working in this patch right here. I'm using Variegate as a sequencer in pendulum mode going into channel 1. It's a similar patch. Variegate is getting the same gate that's going to Bishop's channel 1 as a gate to advance each step. Take a quick listen and then I'll tell you how assignable CVs are working in the patch in just a sec. Like my remote. cool, right? I have all assignable CVs modulated by Griffin's clause. And Griffin's is just being used as a recordable offset generator, and it's also quantized to a time signature. ACV1 is transposed for channel 1 pre-quantizer. ACV2 is transposed for channel 2, also pre-quantizer. These are just from Griffin's channels 2 and 3. Just notice the lights going up and down for Griffin's channel 2 and 3. That's how you can tell. ACV3 is turning on external recording when it receives a high CV. Pretty cool. Notice that as the light goes on for channel 1 on Griffin's, that little red light indicating the external recording is also on. So this just keeps the sequence evolving. And ACV4 is set to run for both channels. So that just means bishops will only advance from the clock when that CV is high. But there's an envelope that keeps on like trailing in between those gaps. What's going on there, right? Yeah, that's because triple steeple is set to this adaptive looping envelope. It just adapts to the last gate that it receives, and then it just keeps on looping that envelope length until it receives another gate, and then it adapts to that length. So sometimes you get envelopes that aren't quite finished, and sometimes you get envelopes that keep on repeating really quick. It creates a really interesting sort of pause in this patch. In the end, I just wanted to show you that this thing will work really great for generative style patching. There's so much to explore if you want to do that and get weird. Here's a quick list of some things you can assign to the CV. Again, you can assign these independently per channel or to both of them at the same time. There's run, as we saw. We can even address the slot in the playlist to advance to the next one. Transpose pre or post quantizer or by octave. Activate gen, regen, or process and change any of the values of those knobs for those algorithms. You can also have a separate reset for channel 2. Yeah, so many opportunities are possible here. Let's check on other me and see if I've chilled out a little bit.
Up channel 2 source, playlist mode, playlist on, playlist next.
Let's go to future me instead.
2, output channel.
So that's just some of the things that you're going to find on Bishop's Miscellany Mark II and how they work. Initial reactions? Yeah, there's a lot to explore on this module, but it's pretty easy and quick to just jump in and get immediate use out of it as well. Signs of a really well thought out module. It's clear how much time Shakmat put into this thing. I think they might have even sold me on the little screen. It's central to the module and how it functions, but there's also so much control with the knobs and the buttons. And there's consistency throughout the UI and how stuff functions, and it's just endless jams with algorithms, I think. There's something really cohesive about it all. Some other modules with so much going on, they might have a core module and then expander so that you can have more control if you want, but that's not the route that Shakmat went. That kind of idea appealed to me in the past, but I think a fully thought out interface wins. Bishops is a big win. I did encounter a couple of small bugs here and there, but nothing that really stopped the fun. Occasionally there was like a sour note or something like that, which I think just kind of happens with quantizers, but I imagine having a much easier way to update firmware is going to make that go away real quick once people start using it. I'm kind of impressed that they pulled off such a deep module with software running on it and everything runs fairly smoothly. I even have a jam coming up, I think it's jam 4. It has some pretty fast drumming on it, and I'm adding in some snare rolls with ratcheting using listening mode, and it kept up just fine. Alright, let's get to some more jams before I wrap up. main thing in this patch is Bishop's Miscellany. It is doing live manipulation of what is coming into it. It is not actually sequencing. There's two different voices, Rossi and Banshee Reach. Griffin's Claws is the sequencer. Channel 1 and 2 is summed, going to the input of channel 1 of Bishop's Miscellany. It's actually going into channel 2 as well. There's no patch cable there, but if we go over to the options page, we can see that channel 2 source is input 1. So both of these are receiving the same input. Both channels are in listening mode. Here's how it's working. For channel 1, CV is going in here, it's being quantized and being passed right out, and it's going into Rossi. That's it. So there's nothing really special going on channel 1. If I go to channel 2, we can see that this green light is on, and that is the special thing in this patch. If we go into that page, this is the regen page, we can see that this says delay. What does that mean? So that means you can delay whatever's coming in, however many steps you want, choose the pitch you want to send it at, and then it's still being quantized to pentatonic minor. So that means that both channels can sequence two different things in two different timings. So you have one voice kind of delayed from the other one. If we look up here, there is a module called Awesome. This is actually a collab with Spectral. This is a little kind of mixer, kind of a logic module. We kind of thought it would be a fun addition to the AO1, which is an attenuverter and an offset. This sort of adds the same kind of idea, attenuverter and offset, or two inputs similar to the way that 3xMIA works. And you can switch the amount of offset on the back from 5 to 10 for both of the channels independently. The cool thing is that we have outputs for both channels, invert for this second channel, and then we have 3 logic outs. So we have sum and an OR. Right now we're using the OR out. Let me tell you how. We're basically using it to create a gate pattern variation for the delayed sequence. This pattern will trigger the envelope on triple steeple channel 1 for Banshee Reach on the left. Awesome is getting 2 inputs, one from Griffin's Claws channel 4. This is being automated in the patch so it goes up and down in a long sequence. The other one is the trig out from Bard Quartet, and this is being produced from Bishop's channel 2 being requantized, and a trigger is sent out when a note changes. The OR output on Awesome will only go high when both inputs are high. So that means only when a trigger is happening on Bard Quartet and the light of channel 4 of Griffin's Claws is bright. This is just a fun little detail instead of having an exact copy both left and right. kick from channel A, we have snare from channel B, ghost snare from channel C, and then reset from channel D. 30-second notes for both the kick and the ghost notes, but then the snare is just on 16th notes. Then we have the kick and the 2 snares going into Griffin's claws, channels 2, 3, and 4, and this is acting as a mute for the drum stuff. This allows for a lot of flexibility, especially because Griffin's claws is a recorder, so I can record in when I want the kicks to happen and when the kicks not to happen, which means that I'm extending the sequences that are happening on Steppy and making them more dynamic and also really controllable on the fly. And I think Griffin's claws is a little bit more fun than punching in new notes on Steppy. So we have the ability to mute and automate those mutes on Griffin's claws, 3 sequences of gates going out to Rample, but here's the twist. We have both of the snare patterns going out to 3x MIA, and those are being mixed together, and those are going to the snare of Rample, because we're actually going through multiple layers of the sample on Rample. So we're actually getting ghost notes that is serving a different sample than those main hits. The way that that's working though, I'm getting a longer gate from Steppy, and that is being melted right here, and that is then going to AO1, an attenuator and offset module. So it's going in here and it's going out to both of these CV ends of Rample, and that CV is controlling the layer of the sample and also the level. It would allow me to create more contrast between the snare and the ghost notes. Or if I wanted to go this way, it would be all ghost notes. If I pivoted this offset to the plus, then it would be all main hits. Another cool way just to like control your drums sort of after the fact. Think about not just what you're sequencing and where it's going, but what things can go in between. There's another interesting thing happening in between the snares and Rample. If we go over here to channel 2 of Bishops, we have Ratchets set up. Obviously, these notes are being triggered faster than 30-second notes. If we go to the process page, we can see that a ratchet is set up 2 times. Every time I get a gate, it's going to ratchet it depending on the clock. And so it's going to fill it with the amount of ratchets that I select there. The cool thing is that I actually recorded what that sequence was into the internal recorder, and because this is actually running 64 steps, it is a longer pattern than is here on Steppy. So again, the rolls where they fall isn't the same place everywhere. I have a hi-hat too that's being triggered by the clock, and then it's going through the LPG by Spectral again, and that's just controlled by this envelope here. I just love this jam and that drum feel. It's pretty hard to stop looking for opportunities to do more in your patches. I kind of ran out of patch cables in that one, and I thought I had enough. Anyway, that's Bishop's Miscellany MK2. What do you think? This is definitely the deepest module that I own, and if you're looking for a CV gate recorder or an algorithmic sequencer, you should probably consider this. Being able to bring your own sequencer or offset module, use algorithms on the fly without repatching, just pull so many musical melodies with one module. Having a really straightforward way to save and recall sequences, a 2 thumbs up, really well thought out UI, and the modular sensibility that I got from it are all things to love. An all-in 14 HP is no joke. I've used step sequencers and recorders, and none of them are as flexible as this. It's an involved sequencer and recorder, but it is not held back by limited controls of an encoder and a screen. It may start there, but the controls are compelling, and having assignable CVs to further fine-tune things or get weird is awesome. I feel like it's easy to memorize where all the things in the UI are, just because of the way that it's structured. That just would not have been the same if all the buttons were the same size and color and laid out in a grid. It really didn't take me long. It's almost like they wanted to make sure you could operate this in a dark club. I mean, probably, right? That's gotta be one of their testing grounds. Makes sense? I tried to cover as much as I could in the jams, but I still see so much more to explore, and ground to cover. I'll keep that going for sure, and you'll probably see this in future videos. If you have any questions about this module or anything else that you see in the case, definitely feel free to comment down below. I'm always down to banter back and forth about this modular stuff, no matter where you are in your modular journey. It's important to really consider each module decision, so if there's any way that I can help in that, answer some questions, I would be stoked. Thanks again to Shakmat for sending bishops to me so I could show it to all of you. And if you're new here, hi, I make videos about modular synths in cases like this one. So please like and subscribe if you like, it really helps. Thanks for the support. If you want to do something extra to support the channel, you can always buy me a coffee. If you're not familiar with it, Buy Me a Coffee allows you to donate to the channel about the cost of a coffee, just to give me a little bit of a boost and keep these videos going. But if you'd rather just take those funds, donate them to any relief agencies, support trans rights, or pay it forward at your local coffee shop, you should probably just do that. Oh, I've also been dabbling in lessons, so maybe you need some sort of modular guide to get through your first couple patches, or you want to learn new techniques that you might see in my videos, or maybe you're just curious about all this modular stuff and you're trying to put together a small, compelling case to explore yourself. If you're interested, find me on Discord or Instagram, and I can send you a calendar link to book in. I'll be laying low for the rest of the summer in terms of posting videos, but I'll be working on something interesting that I can share later, as always. Last summer it was this video and me learning Resolve. What will it be this summer? I'm also thinking about doing a stream or maybe a couple. Just a patch from scratch or something like that. If I do that, I'll give you a heads up. And then in September, I'm gonna be jumping right back in with a couple modules that might have already popped up in videos here and there, but I haven't featured them yet. And I'm also busy trying to figure out that drum sequencing video that I wanna make, and a bunch more. So many ideas. Maybe another small case would be helpful to make that happen though. Anyway, that's it for me. Thanks for watching, and come out for streams if they happen. Happy patching.